Does the UK have money blocks and money mindset issues? I thought this was a really fascinating question because there's no doubt that the country, the city, the town you live in impacts and influences your money mindset. But I wanted to get a bit more information about this. So I invited some of my Money Bootcampers from the UK to join me for a very juicy and real roundtable conversation about how living in or growing up in the UK has impacted their money mindset. Have a listen. I think you're really going to love it and find some little nuances and little pockets of resistance that you didn't even know you had. All right, stick around and listen now.
I'm in Cwmbran, South Wales, and I currently help women with taking the most potent stories out of their life story and then using that as really compelling content. And I joined in, I think it's April 2020, so just short of 18 months.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll come back to everyone. I just thought we'd get the intros out of the way. Is it Dana or Dana? Because it's different in different places.
It's Donna, but it really doesn't bother me, Dana, either. So thank you. My name's Donna Whiteland, and I'm based in Sheffield, which is north of England. You know, we're all from the UK, so you know that. So my business is called Surprise and Delight, and it does exactly that for your customers. So it might be onboarding gifts or sending out marketing materials. So I do the surprise and delighting for people. Yeah, and that's me and my business.
And when did you join Money Bootcamp?
Oh yeah, sorry, the end of 2016. I had to look that up before I came on. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes people tell me they only joined a year ago, and I think, but I feel like I've known you for so long. Like, what the heck? Anyway, thank you. Nice to have you here, Donna. Oh, hang on. Sorry, Tanya, you're next.
Hi. I'm Tanya. I'm based in London. I'm originally from Germany, which is where I am right now still. But I've been in London for 17, 18 years. So so quite a long time. I'm an artist and a drawing coach. So I paint and I do cushions, and but on the drawing side, I help people who've always wanted to draw, but always something came up. So either children, work, and now they're in a time where they can invest in their own desires. And so I help them just sort of demystify the drawing world, because a lot of artists like to make it sound like it's like this, you know, you need something special to be an artist. But I help people just get started and discover how fun it is to draw, and it's not scary at all. And I joined bootcamp in January 2018. I remember that very well. And it was like 4 a.m. in the UK. I woke up and I was like, this is it. It was 5 minutes to the offer being over or something. And I was like, yeah. So I remember that.
What a cool business you have.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I think that's such a big theme I'm seeing for people at the moment, is reconnecting to their joy and their childhood dreams. And it's so great, yeah, getting that permission to be able to do those things.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Leah, would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see you. It's like, I'm so excited. There's so many of us and we're so close. So I'm Leah. I'm based in Ross-on-Wye, so really not very far from you, Jessie. I'm currently in Cape Town, though. I'm French, working in England, and my partner is from South Africa, so I'm all over the shop. I'm the chief executive for a leadership development company, and I joined Money Bootcamp in November 2020.
Lovely. Thank you so much. It's so great to have you here. And I love, I love that we're from so many different places. It's brilliant. Okay, Jo, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Jo Howarth. I live just outside Liverpool in the UK. I'm from the south of England, but I moved up to Liverpool 100 years ago and never went home. I'm an advanced hypnotherapist and a mindfulness practitioner, and I run a company called the Happiness Club, and I teach people how to look after their mental health and emotional well-being. So we have a schools program, we work with corporates, and I have the membership for individuals as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Jo. It's great to hear. Oh, when did you join Money Bootcamp?
Oh, yes, sorry. I joined, I think, about the same time as Tanya, January 2018.
Yeah, you've been around for a while.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, now that we've all introduced each other, where we're going to start is, and this is where I started with Australia. You know, I was born in Australia, but I actually spent my real formative years in the UK. And so I had to really Google and say, like, what are the values of Australia? Because there are the stated values, but then there are the stereotypes sometimes. And so when I looked at the values of the UK, I saw democracy, rule of law, respect and tolerance, and individual liberty. And this is very different. I'll tell you the Australian ones: freedom, respect, fairness, and equality of opportunity. And so we were really looking at the Australian one about how that fairness thing really impacts our business, and it impacts our pricing, and how it can be really hard to charge your mates, but then all your clients become your mates, right? And so then I was thinking about, like, me as someone who's lived in the UK, but also is an outsider. I was like, well, how do people see the UK? And obviously there's friction between, the different parts of the UK. But I was like, here are some interesting things that I really want to hear about how this has impacted your business. Politeness. I mean, wouldn't we agree that that is something that the UK is known for, whether or not it's true or not, right? Is politeness seems to be a British virtue, something that is very valued in Britain. The stiff upper lip, the soldier on. I remember seeing that ad when I lived in London, being a soldier on type of person, the keep calm and carry on type mentality of, like, we're just going to get on with it, and we'll just carry on no matter what the weather. We're going to carry on, no matter what's going on, we're going to carry on. And I want to hear if this, and some of these will resonate with you and some of them won't. So, just write down what pings for you, and I want to hear from you in a sec. But where in your business do you have this keep calm and carry on stuff? Where are you having a stiff upper lip? Where are you a soldier on type of person? And it could come for you in terms of, you're not allowed to hire help. You don't take time off, you work through, stress or whatever. Or it could be that you just get on with it and not make a fuss. Seems to be a big thing too, not making a fuss. The next thing that I wanted to put down is, and I actually Googled again another list of British values, of restraint, of, like, kind of being a bit restrained. And where does that come up against your business? Because I see sometimes a real divide, but especially if you're in the personal development world, or if you have American clients, where it seems to be like, well, that's very flashy, or that's very American, and we're not like this. And of course, we've got, a French and a German person, and you have a different flavor in that as well. So I want to hear where these things are kind of butting up against each other and creating friction or contrast in your business. Another thing I think is really key is tradition. Britain is one of the most traditional cultures in our history, right? And so where is that coming up in your business? Do you feel like making more money is against the natural order of things, or against tradition in your family? Or are you allowed to be wealthy with your accent or with your background? I want to hear about that. Apologetic is something that comes up a lot for British people. Where does that come up in your business? Where do you apologize? Where do you feel like you have to hide? Following rules. Queuing was something that came up again and again for British people. It was so funny about following rules and queuing, and I think the lesson for that is taking your turn. Where are you waiting for your turn and not pushing yourself forward. Maybe it's coming up against some visibility issues for you because it feels like it's going out of turn, or you have to wait until someone tells you can do something. Yeah, that's the first place I want to start. So I'm actually going to go reverse order now. So Jo, I'm going to start with you. And what I just want to hear is like, yeah, what ahas do you have around that, around where you might be conforming or, rejecting that culture, and where is it creating some tension in your business and with your money? So Jo, go first.
Okay, so I've made some notes. So one of the ones that stood out for me was the politeness one. Massive. I mean, I'm from the south of England. I'm from a tiny little village. Politeness was very. I think one of the things that came out for me when you were talking was the class thing. I don't know if that exists in other countries in the same way as it does in the UK, but I'm very middle class, so politeness was very much a huge part of. So one of the ways that's come out for me, because I swear like a trooper, right? I swear all the time, but I only ever used to do it in private, and I wouldn't ever have put it in my business. It was real. So it was kind of like I wasn't being completely myself, because you said about restraint, I was holding myself back from speaking on social media, for instance, in the way that I would speak normally with my friends and family. So that's actually something that I've only really overcome in the last year or so, and I swear like a trooper on social media now, so that's fine. The soldier on thing for me is absolutely part of my upbringing, and you're totally right, it is the stiff upper lip, just shut up and get on with it. That's how I was brought up. Don't whinge, don't complain, don't, just that this is what life is, you just get the fuck on with it. So that's something that I've overcome personally for myself, but I find that in my clients now. So that's the barrier for me with my clients, is that they don't believe that they're worthy of the kind of help that I offer, because they should just be able to cope with whatever life throws at them, right? In terms of the restraint, the first thing that popped into my head was about selling too much. So that kind of hanging back from posting endlessly. I post at least once a day on my social media with a sales message, and almost every time I do it, and if I do it more than once a day, I can feel that voice in the back of my head going, stop, don't do it again. Oh my God, they'll all think, oh Jesus, all she does is sell. So that's a huge one for me. So yeah, and even just once a day, I'm still like, is this too much? Should I shut up now? Yeah, I think that's it. The rules thing again ties in with that politeness. It ties in with that not allowing yourself to be completely yourself, waiting for permission to show everybody exactly who you are in terms of selling. So all of those for me really clicked into the selling thing.
What about the politeness? Is it polite to talk about money?
No, not at all. No. And that's a huge one. That's one of the things I love most about the Facebook group for Bootcamp, is that people come in and it's the only space where I feel comfortable coming in and talking about my wins financially, because there are so many other people in there that do it from so many different other cultures that it allows me to open up and do that too. But I wouldn't dream of posting on my personal social media about how much money I've made this month. That just wouldn't, no thanks, that wouldn't happen.
And I see that, and if it's not polite to talk about money, I imagine it's hard to set your prices, talk about your prices at all, because it's just so impolite.
I've just done a social media post just now because I had a conversation with a one-to-one client, and she was talking about the feeling of anxiety is my specialism, and she was talking about the feeling of anxiety in her chest, and I come from anxiety, so I just wrote a post now, just, oh my God, do you wish it would just fuck off and leave you alone, because that's how I used to feel. And so I'd just done this post, and I got to the end of the post and I was like, okay, so I'm doing it to look for one-to-one clients. I was like, so now really I should just put how much my one-to-one package is, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I couldn't put the price on it.
Yeah, because there's a lot to unlearn about that, a lot. And I would say that soldier on thing is so big. And, I really encourage you to talk about that publicly with people, because we have to give each other permission that it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to ask for somebody to help you, because we don't live in villages anymore where we can help each other like that. You often have to, you know, find someone outside of that to help you. And it's big. It's like, it's not polite to talk about money. It's not polite to talk about my problems. So I'm screwed.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that's great. Great first aha. Thanks, Jo. I appreciate that. Okay, Leah, you're next. What came up for you?
Gosh, there's so much. The one that struck me is the status quo thing. So in the UK, it's still a class system, and there's a bit of a know your place. And I know that it was quite striking for me because I came to the UK after pretty much a decade in North America. And I came and I started working in this company, and a lot of it was, you know, about revitalizing it. And I wanted to change the name of our business development managers to customer success, whatever, leaders. And I remember my closest colleague, who is a, you know, very British, very proper, bit of a Miss Moneypenny type, and she just burst out laughing, and, you know, she was like, that is preposterous and it's so American. And, you know, it was, you know, for me it was a bit of a shock. I was like, oh, okay, so there's a real big culture element to deal with here. And so all of that thing of, you can't put yourself first, you can't name things as they are, and it's you know, that very polite and sort of no, the benefit can never be for you. So what really struck me when I came to the UK is that the amount of charities that exist in the UK for me is really striking. And it's, you know, people will set up charities to do stuff, or if you sell something has got to go to charity. You know, there's that thing of, you can't possibly sell something that's got huge value if you're not going to give all of that benefit away. You know, there's and the company that I run used to be a foundation, and it transitioned into a commercial organization. And the mindset switch that had to happen, a lot of people couldn't handle. You know, even though we do the same job, we deliver the same service, the fact that we're no longer a not-for-profit is something that was really, really difficult for quite a lot of my staff to move towards. And for me, that was really interesting, because it's like, your job hasn't changed. What you do on a day-to-day basis hasn't changed. We're still delivering an amazing service. And by becoming a commercial organization, we're giving ourselves the means to do our jobs better. But it was just a complete mindset no. And then I think I mean, there's so much stuff in there. The know your place and the politeness thing for me really struck me. So I came, you know, I spent a lot of time in North America. I'm French. I'm very straight, you know, with me. I can't even hide what I think. So what I think, you'll read it on my face anyway. And so I know that when I first came onto the job, the reputation I got was that I'm very difficult to work with. I'm ruthless. You know, so it was kind of a get back in your box and get back in your lane type of attitude towards me, when, you know, I had to do a job. You know, it was all about open and honest feedback. It was about, you know, really getting down to the bottom of things, talking about the real issues. And I could see how people would sort of not really address the real problem. And all of that is linked to money mindset, because, you know, if you've got a project that's not working and everybody is like, oh no, you know, you're doing a great job, and, you know, I love it when you talk to me that you know, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to sort out the problem, and you're not going to get to the, you know, the rewards that you need afterwards. So I definitely think that you know, I could be so bold as saying that the UK in itself has an issue with money, and just talking about it is a real problem. So yeah.
That's really fascinating. Thank you. And now I reflect, a lot of my jobs in the UK were in the nonprofit sector. And so I I really get that. And it's that thing of like, you have to do it for something else, and it has to go to charity. I think that's so fascinating that it's, even maybe the word profit could be like a bit of a taboo. And so, if you're in your business to make money as well as help people, it can feel horrible, and that's where people start to over deliver, undercharge, feel guilty all the time for not being able to help everybody. So yeah, thanks for that, Leah. Okay, Tanya, you're next.
So much coming up. So it was it's very interesting when you were listing what you had researched, and then I thought, oh, I fit in really well in the UK, especially because I'm in London. I think it's a lot freer. It's so multicultural anyway, and it's a lot more broken down on the surface, the class system. I feel like in the day-to-day, and I am very polite. I love it. It's like, the more polite I can be, the more it makes me happy. So I was just looking back over the years when I was working for other people. It's been a long time, but when I was working for other people, I always got on really well with everyone from all different classes as well, because you can tell if a director of a different company or something is maybe from very, very British, as you may expect, but I noticed that I just fit in, and I love the language. From the moment I left Germany, everything was in English. I read and listened to everything in English, and I love learning new words and the pronunciation, and so I always felt like, oh yeah, I don't rock the boat. I don't what's the word? See, I've been in Germany too long now. I don't ruffle any feathers. I just blend in, and I do, compared to Germany as well. I love that politeness a lot more, because in Germany everything's very abrupt and very restrained. So I love the freedom in the UK, the personal freedom. That's one thing I notice the most whenever I come back to Germany. It's like, who cares? Why are there policies for this? It's like, just let me be. In the UK, they just let you do your thing. And so I always, when you were reading out these things, I was like, yeah, that's like fine. I have no issues. And then when I was hearing Joe and Leah, I was like, actually, well, I'm now, when I think about it, being self-employed, it does bring up a lot. It brings up keep your head down, you're German. You should not be, someone's going to attack you for the past as soon as you get too, well known or something. They're not going to like you because you're not English. You shouldn't really be there even after all this time. I'm too common to be successful. I can have my little tiny group somewhere, but I can't be super successful. When you were saying about the rules and the queuing, taking your turn, I was like, yeah, I like rules, of course I do. And then I realized that I had always been playing quite small with my drawing group before the pandemic. It was like in my little corner, and I felt like I was running an empire when I was opening I had 3 different locations. At the end, I was like, I'm like the queen of life drawing in North London. I felt so, but it was very small still on a grand scheme. And then when everything went online, I was one of the first who took life drawing online. I was like, yes, this is now my time. I was like, and then all these other people started having groups, and they went much bigger. And I was like, but I was here first. You should be queuing. So that was so interesting to have that come up. And then I was like, well, now they are so big again, and I'm so small. So now I guess, you know, that was my 5 minutes in the sun, and now it's done. And looking at realizing now that actually for the last few months I have been hiding, because I was like, well, you know, you gave it a shot, and you're different now. And that's another thing which I realized, that in September I changed my business model to fit me, and now I'm different than everyone else, and so now I have to hide because I'm different. This is really interesting, because it's like that, you know, that soldier on, don't make a fuss. And I realized that from the moment I founded my drawing group, it was the same as everyone else's. It was the same model, the same price structure, the same everything. And even when, so I launched in the end of March 2020, and up until this summer, I ran every single week, 6 classes a week, and it was getting way too much, and it wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't working, but it was what everyone else was doing. And then I changed everything around to fit me, and I was really excited about it for about a month or two, and then all the fears came up of you're different, you should have just kept going, you know, it's not you're not providing enough value if at the same time it suits you. That really, I realized that there was, if I'm not available 24/7 to my clients, then they shouldn't be paying me a monthly fee, because, you know, what about all that downtime? So that was really interesting to sort of have all of that.
Yes, so much, huh? And that's what I think is so fascinating about this work. You think, oh, that topic, like, that's fine, there's nothing in there for me. And then there's always little pockets where you just go, oh yes, I can see that. And, you know, the too common thing, and wait your turn, that's really profound to think, you know, where that could be showing up for you, of just going, well, it's not my time, you know, or it will be my time when I do XYZ, instead of thinking, no, I can design it how I want to, and I don't have to follow the rules. I can still, you know, do what I want and do what I like. So I love that. Thank you so much, Tanya. It's fascinating.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, Donna, you're next. I can't wait to hear what's brought up for you already.
Yeah, well, so everything you've all said, absolutely already. So I started, so I used to live in London when I first graduated, sort of many years ago. Loved the London life. I met my husband at university, and we just both had this great London time. You know, I was contracting, earning decent money. And then once we got married and decided to have kids, I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mums, and we were able to, because we were both on a sort of decent wage, and, you know, and well, that's another thing. I always feel like I need to apologize or explain why I could be a stay-at-home mum. And so I did that for a good few years. We moved back up north just because of London house price and things like that. And we put the kids in a private school as well, which is, again, another very guilty thing that comes up for me. You feel like you have to whisper it to people, and you can't really tell them. And so we need extra money to be able to pay for a nice lifestyle and things like that. So I started my own business, and it was just trying to grab something, because I felt very uncomfortable going back to work, not because of going back to work, but my skill set I felt was out of date, and who'd want to employ me now? I've been out of the game for 5 years and all these things. So I thought, right, I'll set up myself. I've always wanted my own business, but sort of almost grabbed the first opportunity, like, oh, I've got this idea about doing, it was an underground map, but for your life. And so I started doing that, but it really wasn't my passion. So it really never took off. And there's so many things about myself in that. And my businesses have merged on, but there's been a theme really the whole time. I've never felt that I've always been feeling like I'm not an expert in my field, that I need to graduate. And I think it all comes down to the being polite and following the rules. There's a hierarchy of people when you need to speak to them, I think, with businesses. And because I feel like I'm quite going in junior, even though it's my own business, if I speak to the CEO of a company, in my head, oh, they're the CEO, even though they could be exactly like me, the CEO of their own business. I just put them on this pedestal. And fear talking, you know, I'm like, oh, well, I better play a little bit small. So I'm always playing small. And I think it has a lot to do with just being very, very polite. And so I'm just waffling on here, looking at all my different notes. I don't like confrontation either. So that keeps me small, especially with social media posts or things. I just keep it very boring and stale. I've stopped actually posting because I thought nobody wants to hear boring and stale, but that's because my true personality is not coming out, because I just don't want to fight about things. And again, I think that follows down to the social divide in the UK. There's massive social divide. And because I'm not on the, especially up north, I'm not on this lower income, you know, sort of like almost socialist view at all. I don't want to come across like, oh, I've got loads of money or ruffling people's feathers. You've all said sort of similar things. So I know it's all in my head, but I do think it stems from generations of this massive social class, and like I say, especially up north, which is where I was brought up. What was my point with the, yeah, and so that for me as well with pricing is a massive one. I feel I need to give the price of what I do for what people can afford, rather than actually what it costs. And I've got myself in so many sort of like tizzers about that. Whereas the truth is, if people can't afford it, they're not my ideal client, and I need to go and find the bigger fish. And there are loads in Sheffield, but they're not the ones that you necessarily meet. I need to go and find them and sort of woo them and do all that. But because it's such a working class place, everybody's seen quite small, so I've been pricing quite small as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, I find the social class the main thing that stops me.
Yeah, and I totally get it. And where we were talking about earlier today is this feeling of leaving people behind if you're too successful, and almost being like a traitor to your family or to your class or to your, you know, culture. And I can see it's really big in the UK. You know, different towns absolutely have their own money stories. You know, I live in Newcastle in Australia, and it's a coal town, just like, you know, Newcastle in the UK is a coal town, right? And it's very working class kind of place. And, you know, that informs then how you live, or like what car you want to have, or things like that. And so, you know, really look at where those contrasts are, and where you feel like it's going to move you too far away from what you feel are your values, or where you feel like your box is and where you're supposed to be. And, you know, there could be, you know, when we think about like the BS excuses exercise in boot camp, like what excuses do you come up with when it comes to like, well, I can't do my business because of, you know, XYZ? Is it because I'm from here, or this is my accent, or it's just not the done thing? It feels like it's against the natural order of things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Donna. That was so cool. And Jessie, lucky last. I'd love to hear what came up for you. And it's great going last, because you get to add in all the layers of everyone else's stuff too.
Absolutely, definitely been gathering up bits along the way. But just to kind of follow on from Donna, yeah, 100% on the kind of caste system in that's not spoken about but is. I came from middle to upper, I suppose, not that I really realised that. And then my fiance has always kind of lived on the poverty line, and so that's been quite a difficult conversation to keep having. And we're in a very industrial town, and I feel that, like when I moved in like 3 days before lockdown year before last, I was like, how on earth am I going to become who I want to become in this place? I can't see people like me here. And I actually carried a lot of shame about it. I was like, oh, I'm living in this place. And yet I couldn't say that because it's where he'd grown up and he knew half the town. And actually, although nobody would probably realize that, he was carrying me financially at the time. Even though he's on income support allowance and has been for a while because he can't work, and he carries a lot of shame around that. So it's, yeah, there's so many layers in there. But it was interesting to me that one of the Money Bootcampers, who's, I don't know, 40 minutes from me, still in Wales, still in a very mining area, has done really well. She's a bit younger than me. She's into her millions now. And I'm like, okay, if she can, I can. even though I don't even sell to people local, like I'm selling to people all over the world. So what that had to do with it was just ridiculous. But it's so that yes, there's that. There's the asking for help side, which after escaping the cult, like, I don't know, 4 years ago that I grew up in, I would never ask for any help. Like, you didn't, like, and also it was like, well, you're not dying, so you don't need it. Like, there was no kind of like, what, you've just been through 30 years of emotional abuse? Like, it was like, well, just go out there and get a job. Like, you haven't got any unpacking of your PTSD to do. Like, seriously? And I think there's that kind of like die with your boots on attitude that particularly is well around here. And I think a lot of from like industrial era, it's like that's what those generations did. You know, they got maimed and they went back to work with one less limb, and you just did it. And so did the generations after you. And there's so many like miners' cottages and stuff around here where those families have lived in those year after year after year, and they don't change their lifestyles. Then they stay there. Like particularly the valleys in Wales, you live in that valley and you die in that valley, and you don't move outside of it. And it's been really interesting looking at that, having had my father growing up in Australia and always kind of having that global outlook. It's like, oh, other countries do other things. So I think for me, it's always been a conscious decision to work with coaches and mentors that aren't in the UK, because I'm like, I need something that gives me the freedom and the creativity that I don't get here, because everything has to be so structured. Like, why would you change it? It's not broken, and we've done it that way for years. And I'm like, no, like, particularly with my background, having come from the cult where we literally were sheeple, like everybody followed the same thing. It's like, I need to be able to give what's creative inside of me an outlet. And so I will literally search for people outside of my country. And I think it's a lot of the reason why people, when they find me, go, I didn't know you were British. Like, I thought you were American. It's like, I need that. That's the piece of me that, and again, the same thing, like, I feel like, and I think I do quite well at managing it now, but I feel like people often judge me for being, I don't want to say ballsy because that's masculine, but there is that. It's like, you've got this heavy masculine energy where you're all out there. That's not appropriate for a conservative Britain. And you just need to shut up and be that perfect little housewife that just toes the line. And it's like, what? In America, that there's nothing wrong with that, for instance, or Australia, where there's that freedom. And I think a lot of that has typically kept me quiet. And it's why I've gone to the other countries and probably, I don't know, I just never think of working with British mentors, like, as that's so judgmental, but it's like, I don't want that vibe. And I don't even consider talking like my content to British people for customers. I just think at every other country but. And I think it's just because I feel so hemmed in, and so like, it's this way or no way.
So fascinating, Jessie. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, you know, the dying with your boots on thing really like hit me there, because it's like, yeah, there is that, again, it's the soldier on thing, right? Of we have to just get on with it, and we have to suffer. And here's the thing, we're in a world now where we don't have to suffer, we don't have to you know, stay in our place, but there's sometimes we pendulum swing the other way, right? And you know what's so fascinating, speaking to 6-7 Australians today, most of them market to the US. You know, same thing. And I think there's also a bit of a coming back to realize there are actually so many customers in the UK, you know, and they're all looking towards the US as well. And so, you know, they can be your customers. But I want to hear if there's any visibility stuff that comes up for that around, well, I can't do it in my backyard, you know, and like, I don't do anything in Newcastle. I don't do any speaking events. I don't do anything because I feel like I'm like, oh no, that's like, I don't want them to, you know, this is Denise, and then there's Denise. And I'm like, oh no, don't look at me. Then I have to like think it's real, you know. And I think it'd be fascinating if, just put up your hand if anyone has got something to say about that around visibility and marketing in Britain. Or, and you know, there's something here too about, this is what we were talking about for the Australian one, is that so many of us, where we write in US English, we use US terms, we charge in US dollars, and there's something there, not about imposter syndrome, but thinking that if we were to do all of those things and still market to a British audience or an Australian audience, they would think that we're absolute wankers, or that, you know, that we're up ourselves or something. So it's best to just go, no, I'm just going to do it over there and it's fine, but I'll just pretend that it's not real here. Does that make sense? I want to hear if anyone's got an aha around that. Just put up your hand or unmute yourself. Yeah, go for it, Joe.
So actually for me, it's the so I get the local thing. So it makes me cringe if I put something out on social media and someone that I know locally says to me, "Oh, I saw your post," blah blah. It makes me, oh my God, no, because it's not for local people. I don't understand why that's just come up for me when you said that, but that's really weird. But also, actually, the US thing, I'm kind of the flip side of what you've just said. I totally market to British people, and I would love to. I think what I do would be, I totally think what I do would be lapped up in America, but I have absolutely no concept of how to, I think I'm so British, I wouldn't know how to market over there. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
and do you think there's any mindset blocks around that, or it's just not your thing for now? Because there's no right or wrong, obviously.
I guess I'm thinking that it's that they wouldn't understand me because I'm British. That makes no sense, but anyway.
And you know, the flip side of that is that they love different accents and they think it's really cool. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's just, you know, what stories do we have and BS excuses do we have about not being able to, you know, market to different people or price or different things like that. Yeah. Anyone else got an aha around that? Yeah, go for it, Jessie. And then
I've kind of realized more recently I enjoy doing intensives rather than long courses and things. And I would love to go down the route of face-to-face, but I'm telling myself that I would have to travel all across America because that's the people I want to call in. And I'm like, I can't, so that's a non-starter. So I'm already stopping myself before I've even put that offer out there. And I think there's also like, when I think back, a lot of the face-to-faces that I've done in the past have been like in the most dingy, awful places, and they always had to be done indoors. And it was very kind of like business to business. That's the wrong way of putting it. There was not the nice kind of like the retreaty feel or the feminine side of things. And yet I think a part of me goes, oh, that's going to happen because we don't have the kind of facilities over here and we have the weather to deal with. And it's like all of that BS coming up.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, and that's the thing, is why wouldn't someone come to you? That could be really cool as well. And even just that thought of like, there's more than enough clients, there's more than enough business for what I want that would suit me. But we still think there's scarcity around that, or we feel like we'd have to change something about ourselves. And you know, I started my business in the UK. That's when I found out about online business. And my first thought was, I'm going to have to change my accent. I'm not posh enough, you know. And I was like, I have to go take elocution lessons before. But we all have excuses, right, about where people can come from or how many people we can serve and prices we can charge too. All right, Tanya, did you have something to say on that one?
Yeah, I also just remembered about the elocution classes. It's like, I'm going to need to take them. But I just remembered when dive drawing went online and sort of the audience came from everywhere. I always felt like, oh, maybe I should charge in dollars to make it easier for the internationals, and then I'll get more internationals. But then I'm going to have to work in the middle of the night because I'm going to have to cater for my international audience. And then I was like, I do have the Maverick quite high in my archetype. So I was like, no, I'm going to charge in pounds and I'm going to work in pound, like in British hours. I'm not going to, you know, and then whoever wants to come can come. And then there's this voice inside that says, you're never going to be successful because you are alienating all these people in the US, which is such a big country. And the UK is so tiny. It is not, obviously it's not tiny, but somehow in my head, the UK feels like there's 5 people. And, and those 5 people are already drawing with you. So now that's it. You're not going to get any more because you don't want to run a class at, at 2 a.m. so that it's a good time for the US. So,
yeah, I think that is interesting too, of thinking there's sometimes a little bit of resentment around that, right? Of why should I change everything, or why should I do it? And especially when it comes to the American market, because it is a big market, especially if you work in any kind of, business or success or personal development. It is a big market. And I can see sometimes people really rebelling against that, or just going, no, I'm not going to do it. Or, and that's fine not to as well, or feeling guilty like you should do it. And I've got a friend who lives in Adelaide. She runs her webinars on Adelaide time. It's not even, and people and what's annoying about Adelaide? It's half an hour difference to Australia. It's not even 1 hour, it's on the half hour. And she's just like, well, that's where I live. That's where it's going to work for me. And it's tricky. And I totally understand, having a global business myself, where that can come up of that expectation. And the first year of my business, I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to have coaching clients, because I didn't feel like I was allowed to say to them, well, you stay up late. I was like, oh no, I'll accommodate you. And, I think a lot of people with a global business go through that and then realize, hang on, I have to set some boundaries here. Otherwise I'm going to get, really, really burnt out. So I want to hear from each one of you, maybe like a recurring money block that you've been working on in Money Bootcamp. And, if you've had any wins around it, but also if you still have some challenges around it. And so my example on that one is always, my recurring money block is I have to be down to earth. And I think that's a very Australian thing of I have to be, I'm the same as everyone else, all that thing. And that has followed me from my first year in business to every time I've hit new incomes. And it's, and the way it's impacted me is, I've stopped sharing some of my income things because I think that's not very down to earth and relatable. So that's my personal one. And so I'd love to hear, what's a recurring thing that you've been working on in Money Bootcamp? So Donna, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, it's asking for permission. I always feel that I need to ask for permission. So, and I think it stems back from, like I mentioned before, with the hierarchy of things and how things are. So even when you used to work for people, you check how you do things. And I think that's just followed me through. So running your own business, that's my money block is like, oh, I'll just check on, is that, should I charge this much for something? Is that okay? Not with the customer now, but I might ask my family and friends, and obviously they're not the people to ask, but I do feel that holds me back, is owning my prices and owning myself and not having to, in my head, ask for permission. I feel like I should graduate already. I'm graduating my own life, but it keeps pulling me in a little bit.
And you know what? It will probably follow you. And, and that's okay as well. And how do you think being in Money Bootcamp has helped you with that permission piece to dislodge it a little bit?
Oh, tremendously, because the Facebook group is just amazing, because sometimes you can read something differently to how somebody else reads something. And I love that about it. Then it makes you think about things. Even what everybody's just said today, I've written down a couple of things. And then that sticks with you and you think about it. So for me, with the asking permission, it's when I read other people's posts and think, gosh, you've just got to get out of your own way, or whatever it is, really. For me, I've always been a massive people pleaser, and it stems from childhood, being a middle child and all that, and seeing my sister always copying it from my mum and dad. So I've tried to play small and just be this perfect daughter, and I need to break free from that. I have been, and I am doing, but that's how Money Bootcamp helps, because you can see yourself peeling away these layers and going, no, you don't have to be that person, and you can evolve.
Love it. And it is the peeling, right? And I think that's what I always want people to understand is it doesn't matter how much money you make. There's always going to be new layers to that. And some of them are very old and some of them will just follow you, and you might still be a people pleaser at, multi-millions. And it's just something that you're just going to have to work on forever, right? But it's the perfectionism thing that we always have. I'll wait till that's over or I'll fix that and then I'm allowed to make money. And it's not, it's just something you just always going to have to deal with money.
Yeah.
And
that's why
fine.
I feel like I've never quite graduated, but I just need to.
There's no graduation. There's no graduation. But again, that could be a real British thing of like, well, what's your qualification? Where's your badge? Where are you in the hierarchy? And, that's the thing. You have to graduate yourself and just like, well, I'm ready now. I don't have to be in the queue and wait for the next person to die until I can step into their place. It's like,
yeah, no, I think it's
I've graduated.
that. Yeah.
You've graduated and you'll never graduate all at once.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Leah, I would love for you to go next. So yeah, what's a recurring money block you've been working on in Money Bootcamp?
So I think for me, the biggest, because there's been plenty, it was sort of like fireworks of blocks when I first started Money Bootcamp. For me, one of the biggest was fear of visibility. And I think it's definitely linked to a gender issue. So I've always worked in very male-dominated environments, and the fact that I'm a woman and I'm soft-spoken and I'm a bit of an intellectual, I'm completely on the other side of what you would normally expect from leadership development consultants or organizational development consultants, who are in the vast majority white men with a career in the army, a stint in the corporate world. So I'm so completely different to all of that. And my fear was, if I start showing who I really am, people are going to stop, I'm going to devalue the brand of the company that I'm running, because that's not what they expect. They expect like a general that's retired, and that's got like loads of super cool war stories to, draw their experience on. And the fact that, I'm an academic, so for me, it was like hide it. But by doing that, I sort of maintain, the big issue of the company is it's known to be the best kept secret in leadership development. So, put the block of the company and my block together. And that's been the big thing that I've been working on. And it's actually in one of the stories in the group, someone said, one of their light bulbs of that day had been, I'm aware of this block and I'm just going to ignore it. And so I've started this group where I'm speaking to essentially male CEOs of large companies. And I've been sending them, I was like, okay, I'm just going to ignore the fact that I have this fear of them not taking me seriously. So I've just been sending them a video once a week for the past, couple of months. And, whatever their response is going to be, that's just who I am. And I can't hide the fact that I'm a female, small CEO, and I'm running this company, and it's going great. And if you don't relate to that, that's fine. And I'll just go and find clients who need this alternative voice. And I think that for me has been what Bootcamp has brought me, is that leadership development has always functioned in a very specific way. But a lot of the services that my company provided when I first joined the company, I wouldn't have bought it myself. But there are more and more female CEOs who need the service that we provide. And so even if I don't fit the normal client anymore, now I'm growing this new relationship, and I'm completely rethinking how we're going about the business, how we're going to position ourselves in the market. So that fear of visibility, of me not wanting to show who I am because it's not what is known to be in the market, in a very class system. And in the UK, there's still very strong gendered issues. That really struck me when I came back to Europe. In North America, it's so far ahead when it comes to the gender issues in the work. Gender pay gap, gender promotion. In the UK, it's still very those issues are still very strong. So not deciding, even though I'm scared to do it, just ignoring it. It's like, whether it's there or not, I can still achieve my goals by just ignoring.
I love that. I think that's a great antidote to imposter syndrome. I'm just like, I'm just going to ignore that I have it and I'll just move on and it's totally fine. And, this is so much the work we're doing, right? Is normalizing different people with money, and you're normalizing success and leadership that looks like a different thing than it did 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago. And that can feel really hard and it can feel lonely. And, but you're blazing the way for other women too, which is cool. Jessie, do you need to go? Do you want to go next?
I think I might be able to give you a couple of minutes.
Yay. Yeah. Let's know, what are you working on?
So I think probably in terms of what the community has given me is knowing that I can have authentic wealth, what it looks like for me, rather than it having to look like what it does for everybody else. So I'm not going to end up looking like someone else if I get it. So that's been really, really freeing. But what I'm working on that's probably been the biggest is finding out my accumulator that wants to scream at me, you're going to be homeless if you go into the slightest bit of debt, and never having even wanted to ever take out a mortgage, and now going, there's always more money. And I'm seeing the proof that if I do go into some debt, more money just comes in. That has been really powerful in the last little while. It's still fucking scary, but it's happened. It's that proof that it's actually happening has been, I need it again for the next stage up now, but it's been really liberating. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Like literally my pleasure. Like it gives me so much pleasure to see, people thriving, and that whole thing, there's always more money. There is a real trust thing for it, but logistically there's more than enough clients for each and every one of us, more than enough business than we could handle. And, it is a mindset thing, but there's so much unlearning and fear, right? Of family, but also you're an inner accumulator, and it's cool. You have to honor that. You're still, doesn't matter how much money you have, there might be still that part of you that is like that, and that's cool. So yeah, it's been such a pleasure having you in boot camp, by the way, Jessie. It's been amazing. You're a great cheerleader. Yeah. Joe, do you want to go next?
Yeah, okay, so same as everyone, there's so many things, but if I'm going to pick one, the key one, my biggest one is around not deserving it, not being good enough. So what Donna said before about private school, your kids going to private school, I went to private school, but my parents couldn't afford to pay for it, so I got a bursary to go. But it was like this big, so I wasn't as good as the other people there because they were rich, and then now I live in the north, and so now it's like embarrassing to tell people that I went to private school. It's like I have to apologize for it and all of that. So I have that big thing around not being good enough, not deserving to be as wealthy as I want to be, desire to be. For me, the biggest thing that boot camp then has given me is that ability, like you said before, to peel back. So to at every level of business, every level of income, it resurfaces, and you don't deserve to have all this, you whatever. So then I can go back to boot camp and work through the BS excuses and the negative consequences and all of that stuff to peel more of that back. And the Facebook group then, so obviously I do that myself, but then the Facebook group for me is it's just inspiring. I just find it, I love, and again, when I first joined boot camp, when people would post about their big, I've just earned £3 million in 5 seconds flat, it would make me feel even more worthless and jealous. And now, and this is what boot camp has given me now, if they post that, I go, fucking yeah, go on girl, nice one, right? It's a huge mindset shift, that huge.
you know, I love both the posts. I love the big ones, and I love the, oh my God, I made my first passive income, like my first ebook. It was like £7. I'm like, yes, I know the first one's always the hardest. So yes, thank you so much, Jo. And I think there's that whole thing again of the politeness thing is so interesting for all of us. And you know, even the private school thing is really like made me think too, because you know, I'm like, oh, my kids won't, I'm not going to send my kids to private school. And there's still, it's so embedded in us, right? Of like, you know, that class stuff. And you're either too big for your boots. And the contrast, I think, is really interesting for your experience too, because you know how I always talk about it doesn't matter how much money you had growing up, you can have the same money blocks, because so much of it is about the contrast. You know, you could have gone to private school, which some of your friends thought was really fancy, but then I'm sure there was times that you felt like the poor kid in private school, which wouldn't have been true either. So much of it is perception and contrast, and what we've decided about ourselves because of that.
And yeah, totally, that's huge, isn't it? And actually I've just finished my first training course to train people to become hypnotherapists, and 2 of the girls that I went to school with have done the course with me, and they were people that at school I was like, oh, they're like gods, and they're like 1,000 times better than me, and they're rich and da-da. And having got to know them way better, now we're grown-ups, none of what I thought about them as kids is true. It's all utterly in there, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And I find it so fascinating. I really do. So lastly is Tanya. So Jessie, if you need to go, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it and love hearing your story. And we'll see you in the group, obviously. So Tanya, you're lucky last. So yeah, what are you working on? What's going on for you?
It was an interesting question, thank you, because the first one was like, I don't know, it's like there's nothing reoccurring, and I was like, yeah, right. I love this. Actually, I realized the very first powerful memory that came up when I started bootcamp work was around actually a memory I always remembered. It was just I never realized how important it was, and it was as a child, I was told to save for something, and if something I wanted, and I had to save for it. And when I finally saved up for it, I went to the shop and it was gone. And I remember thinking, like, if I wasn't poor, I could have bought it, and now it's gone. And I went home and I was distraught and I was crying, and my mom said, and she's the one who bought it, because she was so impressed with how I'd been saving and how good I had been to get it. So she got it for me. And I learned that if I'm only good enough, if I'm only pathetic enough, because I feel like, it was a bit like, so if I'm good enough, or if people feel sorry for me enough, or if I'm, it basically, I felt there was no power around money for myself. But if I can somehow appeal to someone, to people to care for me enough, they will pay for me. And then that became afterwards that I realized how big it was, and all the things I had put up with, flatmates and friends and people and dates and all that, just because I felt powerless around my own money. And so I've done a lot of work around that. But then I realized it is a layer. Every layer, it comes back, and it looks very different now to what it looked like over the years before I was aware. It looks very different now to compare to 2018, but it is still there. And I realize it with my members so when I shifted the business, I turned it into a membership, and I realize I do the same thing to my members, which is hugely disruptive to the business. I mean, not yet. It's not sabotaging me yet. I think it's probably sabotaging me with new people, because surely I couldn't make that many people care about me enough to give me money. Whereas it's not about me, it's about what I provide. So yeah, it looks like that's the biggest theme I'm working on, taking back my financial power so that I
Wow.
can give my clients back their autonomy, and we can be this business relationship rather than like, please prove that you care about me by giving me money, even if, you know, what I provide is not good enough. Even, of course it is, but so that was a big aha just now.
That's fascinating. And what I find even more fascinating about that is that your mum probably did it to surprise you, you know, and it would have been a really positive thing for her to do. And we as humans, we make these stories up and then it follows us for so long. And so I just think that's such a touching story. And how do you think like boot camp has helped you shift some of that, you know, and make a different decision?
Well, I think about boot camp one, without having had joined boot camp, because before, for a long time, I followed all your, you know, the free stuff and read the books, and then, but actually joining boot camp and being sort of immersed in it made me look at things a lot closer. And then that's when that aha actually came up. And what I love about bootcamp is the people. I mean, I was so excited when I saw Jessie on the call, because I've never met her, but obviously from the group. But Donna, and I think we met in London like years ago, right? I was like, oh my God, it's Donna! So excited. And so it's really about the people, and also finding people with whom you can check in. So I have people who we check in with each other, and we work through I actually didn't do the whole 6 weeks, the whole course, until 2020, when I found a few people and we said, let's just do one thing a week. So not even one module a week. We broke down the module into each thing. So we spent a whole week on negative consequences, for example. And because we sort of kept ourselves accountable to do it in a week rather than in a day, all these layers came up. And so yeah, I don't think without bootcamp, I don't think I would ever be so aware, and then also realize that it's okay to be so aware. And with you, actually, Denise, the way you talk so freely about growing up with your mother, it just, for me, it meant like, okay, I can be honest about my experience growing up without judging what the situation was. And that was really important, because I grew up with a single mother, and here in Germany, or I grew up feeling it was not okay the way things were. And so I always feel like I can't talk about it. I can't talk about where I come from, because then I'm judging, and then I'm making my mom feel bad, and my mom's like the best person ever, so I can't possibly. So having people in boot camp talk about their experiences makes me reflect on how I deal with what comes up, that I can accept it, that I can forgiveness. I never consciously thought about forgiveness before boot camp. So that was, huge. Yeah.
It's a big one. It's tricky. So thank you, Tanya. I really have so appreciated your sharing today. It's been really vulnerable and beautiful. Thank you.
Hey, isn't that such a fascinating thing to think about? And this is just one facet of money mindset. There will be money mindset issues that come from your particular family, your particular profession, and so many other aspects. And this is what we do in Money Bootcamp. So if you were interested in some of those blocks that they were talking about and curious about how it works for you, the next step is to come and join us in Money Bootcamp and work on your money mindset issues as well. And you know what? We all have them. I have them, you have them, and you will continue to have them no matter how much money you make. So you can't wait for the perfect time. You can't go and clean up your money stuff before the cleaner comes. It's not how it works. the best time is now to deal with your money mindset issues. So I want to issue you an invitation. Come and join us in Money Bootcamp. Come and be one of our next UK success stories. I would love to help you. And I've been doing this for 10 years, so there's nothing that I haven't heard. If you know you're ready and you know this is the next step for you and you know that something is holding you back, just go to denisedt.com/bootcamp. You can find out all about our course. You can read even more success stories from some of our beautiful members, and you can just come and join us straight away. It really is that simple. All right, well, I hope I have given you some food for thought about how you could be holding yourself back right now. Remember, you don't have to do it alone. I hope you can come and join us in Money Bootcamp. Thanks for listening.